Hello everyone. Today's video is going to be the first video of the How to Play Chess for Beginners series, and so it's going to be about how the pieces move. So what are the pieces, how the pieces move, and how the board is set at the start of the game. So to start things off, we'll start with an empty board. So there are 8 ranks going this way horizontally, and there are 8 files going this way vertically, and in total on a chessboard there are 64 squares. So like 8 here and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 here. So this is what the board looks like without any pieces on it. Now the first piece we're going to look at is called a rook. So this rook on e4 in the position can go to e5, e6, e7, e8, e3, e2, e1, or f4, g4, h4, d4, c4, b4, or a4. So it can go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It can go to 14 squares right now. So at the start of the game, rooks are placed at a1 and h1 for white and a8 and h8 for black. Now rooks capture the same way that they move. So like you can capture here on e4 and you can capture here. But suppose that this rook over here in the position over here was on g7, let's say, and let's just move it to g7 over here. If it was on g7, then white cannot take this rook because the pawn is in the way, so rooks cannot jump over pieces. If the rook wanted to capture anything, then this rook would have to capture this, but that would be terrible. Anyway, so next piece we're going to learn is a knight. Now this looks like a horse, doesn't it? Well, it does, but it's called a knight. Now knights move in a little tricky way. They move 2 squares any side horizontally, so left or right, and then 1 square vertically, so up or down. Or they move 2 squares vertically, so up, down, or up, and then 1 square horizontally, so here left or right. So this knight on e4 in the starting position can go to g5, g3, f2, d2, c3, c3, c5, d6, or f6. These are the squares highlighted in red and by the arrows, as you can see. So in the starting position, the white knights are placed at b1 and g1, and the black knights and b8 and g8. Now over here, which knight do you think is the best? This knight on e4, this knight on a5, or this knight on h8? Now let's see what this knight can do. It can come to g6 or f7. Okay, so only 2 squares. What can this knight do? Okay, let's look at the blue knight first. This knight can move to c6, b7, c4, or b3. Okay, so 4 squares. And this knight can move here, 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 or here. So on d6, g6, f6, g5, g3, f2, d2, c3, and c5. So So usually you should try and keep your knights towards the center of the board, because as they get to the edge, their power gets cut in half. So this knight can access 8 squares. Now this knight can only access 4 and this knight can only access 2. So now the way knights capture is a little weird, because they capture in the same way that they move. And one more thing, knights are the only pieces which can jump over other pieces. So like suppose this knight can go from here to here, and it can go like this, because it's, now you might be thinking why this pawn is in the way, you can't go there, but you can, because knights can jump over pieces like I just said. But if they capture a piece, then the piece that they capture will only be the piece that they land on, not any piece that they jump over. Now you see, after knight cross c5, this pawn was jumped over, right? But it wasn't captured. So that's the rule. Next piece is a bishop, as you can see here. Now bishops move diagonally. So anyway, diagonally, like in a cross pattern kind of. So this bishop can access over here b1, c2, d3, e4, f5, g6 and h7, and h1, g2, f3, d5, c6, b7 and a8. Now you get two bishops at the start of the game. So the white bishops start at c1 and f1, and the black bishops at c8 and f8. Now remember that a light squared bishop can only stay on light squares and never can become a dark square bishop. So this bishop can only stay on light squares such as these, and this bishop can only stay on dark squares such as these. Same for the black bishops. Just like the rooks, bishops can't bishops can't capture normally. So this bishop could capture that if d6 was moved. And let's say over here this bishop is already here and it's white to move. Then this bishop, just like the rook, can't jump over a piece and capture this bishop. So it's similar to a rook. Now we're going to learn about one more thing which is like the same, and you should like try to keep your bishops on long open diagonals. So now over here you can't take here and you can't take here, like I said in the first position. Now next piece we're going to learn about is the queen, and the queen is the most powerful piece on the board. Why, you may ask? Well, the queen moves like a rook and a bishop combined. So it can move any number of squares vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. So now this queen over here can access e1, e2, e3, e5, e7, e6, e7, e8, a4, b4, c4, d4, f4, g4, h4, b1, c2, d3, f5, g6, h7, h1, g2, f3, d5, c6, b7 and a8. So like the queen is a very powerful piece, as you can see. Now at the start of the game, both sides get one queen each. A black queen goes on d8 and a white queen on d1. Just like the rook and the bishop, the queen can't capture any piece by jumping over it. See, it just can't. Now the last piece Okay, not the last piece. The next piece we're going to learn about is the king. And the king is the most important piece on the board. Like if you lose the king, you lose the game. So a king moves one square in any direction at a time. There is an exception called castling, but that's going to be in my special moves video. So this king on e4 can access e5, f5, f4, f3, e3, d3, d4 and d5. Like this king can go here to f5, but the king can't go here. See, on g6 it just can't, because that's too many squares away, 2 squares away. So you get one king at the start. So at e1 and for a white king and e8 for a black king. Now the king captures the same way that it moves. So like if this king was here and wanted to capture this pawn on d6, then it would go here, here, here. Yeah, let me just do that, and then only we would take this. So it took us 1, 2 and 3 moves after this position to get to this pawn. Now we're going to learn about pawns, and pawns are very, very important. Like, yes, you can lose them. They're not like the king that if you lose them, you lose the game. But pawns are also a little slow, but they have many special moves, like castling for the king. So the pawn moves one square ahead to move, but it cannot capture. So like if there was, just imagine that there was a black pawn here, then this pawn couldn't move forward because the pawn captures diagonally. Now you get a whole row of pawn to shield your pieces at the start of the game. So the pawns cover the 2nd rank for white and the 7th rank for black. And there is one thing that I'm going to explain in the special moves video. There are 2 things actually about pawns, but I'll just explain one more, which is not any of those 2 over here. So if a pawn is on the starting rank, then it can move 1 or 2 squares. It has the choice of both. And so the board is set up like this. The kings on e1 and e8. The queens at d1 and d8. The bishops at c1 and f1, f8 and c8. The knights at b1, g1, g8 and b8. The rooks at a1, a8, h1, h8 and a8. And then the whole row of pawns to shield your other pieces. And that is how the pieces move and the game can begin. I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next video about special moves. Till then, bye bye.